It's a very exciting morning here in Bristol, and I'm talking to a glorious, lovely man in Hong Kong. Mr. Nick Fordham is in the building.
Hello.
And welcome to what you need is a damn good listening to.
Clearly.
With me, Chris Grimes, and it's your turn to come into somewhere called the Clearing, Mr. Nick Fordham. I just need to big you up. I will let you talk in a moment, but you are an all-round sort of global head of yourself. And just in Googling your awesome pants, you're one of the most sought-after soft skill trainers in Asia, or the most sought-after man in soft trainers. We will cover that off. I also Googled you, and there's somebody else who's potentially stealing your thunder, but it does give me a nice segue into what we can also talk about. There's an Australian businessman called Nick Fordham, who runs some sort of talent agency. And he gave a talk recently about surviving show business. And actually, that's something we can also talk about, not about him, but about the fact how we have in common that we've actor trained before we've arrived into the Working Voices space that we both have in common. But just to say, and again, I am going to let you talk in a second. I've really been looking forward to this conversation because we've always hit it off tremendously well whenever we've met. We've always laughed. And I've even got you on film with my comedy improvisation show, Instant Wit, at the very end, giving some audience feedback, which I'm still grateful to you for because it's on the show reel. Anyway.
Nice. Yeah.
Enough about me. May I just congratulate you? You're a lot less sweaty, if I may say, than when I last spoke to you. But how are you today?
Yeah, we aborted the last attempt because my air conditioning wasn't working. I looked a mess. Yeah, I looked a mess. Yeah.
I still liked you in many, many ways, even though you were dripping a bit. So has your aircon been restored? It's
been restored to normal use, and all is well. It's funny, isn't it? When you live in a place where air conditioning is a must, I still find that quite challenging.
Yes.
Because back in the good old UK, it's just, if it's a bit chilly, throw on another jumper. If it's not, take the jumper off. But yeah. Super hot.
As we know, there have been many, many tests to our resilience over time, and it's quite an interesting metaphor of itself, as in, oh gosh, now my aircon's gone as well. So it's been, how have you experienced the last few months in Hong Kong?
It's been fine. I've been quite lucky. I was going to say, until now, we're just about to start having another proper lockdown. But
are you?
Yeah, we're just starting tomorrow, actually. So I've just eaten in a restaurant for lunch, and I think that'll be the last time I eat in a restaurant for several weeks, if not months, which is a shame, because I like to eat out.
Did you go on your own, or did you take your good lady, Mrs. Fordham, with you as well?
Say it again.
Did you go on your own to the restaurant, or did you take good lady Fordham as well with you?
No, I wined and dined declined. Look at me.
Okay. Fine. Bless you. So yes, you're obviously ahead of the curve in the sense that there's obviously a second wave that's now, you've been an interesting precedent of, UK versus Hong Kong, and the different global experience of the pandemic has been quite interesting to tune into.
Yeah, we're on our second curve.
Yes. See what we're doing there. So anyway, Nick, welcome to the Clearing. This is an idea where we're going to talk through some storytelling archetypes. And in a nutshell, this is about, why I've decided to, get on with this podcast. It's about helping people to fly their kite, tell their story, amplify their brand. So getting into who are you and what's the story you like to tell. So the Clearing, first of all, is the first storytelling archetype. Where does Nick Fordham go to get clutter-free, creative, inspirational? It can be a literal or a metaphorical place, but what would you say your clearing was?
Water. I would find probably the best place is the shower or the bath. And I will often say to one of our mutual colleagues, Derek, who I've worked with for many years because we're both based out here in Asia, I'll often say to him, I'll message him or I'll say to him, I've had a shower moment. And he knows what that means. That means I've had my eureka moment in the bath. And, there we go. I've had that moment again. So I find that hot water sort of stimulates creativity for me. And so a hot shower, hot bath works wonders. Cold water, if you want to completely clear the mind and to kind of declutter the mind, then go for cold water. Cold shower or jump in some cold, fresh water or a lake or some
Interestingly, you share that in common with my daughter. She got into her primary school degree by them saying, so tell us what you like to do in your spare time. And she said, well, actually, and then she just answered, have a shower, because it's where she goes to get reinvigorated. So it's strange that you share that with my daughter, but good stuff. You don't share a shower with my daughter, just to be clear. So, so brilliant. We're in the clearing, and you're going to invite me into your clearing. So what's quite curious now is the comedy of I'm metaphorically now in your shower cubicle with you.
I nearly had a towel over the back of the chair to kind of like, but I thought, no, I want to go there. Yeah.
Flicking towels at dawn is all part of the fun. But anyway, so the idea is that we come to a clearing where we're going to have an apple tree as one storytelling archetype, where we're going to shake your tree, Mr. Nick Fordham, to see which apples fall out. And this takes the form of a storytelling exercise that you were kind enough to prepare before we started, which is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is where you've had 5 minutes, or as long as you needed, to think about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that can generally always grab your attention, and then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you, lovely Nick Fordham, that we couldn't possibly know until you tell us. So you don't have to download the whole exercise. Don't panic, Mr. Mannering. We're just going to shake your tree and see which apples fall out. So which one of those elements here in your shower, it's a bit cramped, but with a tree, would you like to talk about?
There's a couple I think I'm going to talk about. I'm going to segue back to my namesake in Australia who talked about, was it surviving after showbiz? I think was what you said.
Surviving show business. I think he runs a talent agency, so it's just the notion of surviving show business. And because of our actor training, we've evolved, as many actors do, to adapt.
So one thing that sort of helped me and inspired me a few years ago was a wonderful example of reframing even before I knew what reframing was. Now, when you sort of think about things like NLP, you know exactly what reframing is. I didn't at the time. So when I came towards the end of my acting career and I knew really it was time to hang up my tights, it wasn't working out, I was very low, I was very poor, and I felt like a complete failure. You know what it's like, you're young, you tell everyone you're going to be an actor, everyone you meet, I'm going to be an actor, I'm going to do this. And then a few years later, it doesn't quite work out. So I went home probably just to get a square meal. And my father could see I was very, very low. And so he took me for a punt. And the two of us sat in the pub in silence for, about the right allotted amount of time that 2 Englishmen do when they know they're going to have a conversation that involves emotions, which is probably about a pint and a half. And then he said, come on then, what's going on? And I told him exactly what I told you. I feel like a failure. And he looked at me and went, what did you always want to do when you were a young boy? And I said, I always wanted to be an actor. That's the point. And he said, yeah. He said, I joined the army. When I joined the army, I joined with a whole bunch of young men who all wanted, when they were young boys, to be soldiers. And they all became soldiers. But after 3 years, after 5 years, after 7 years, many of them made the choice that they'd been a soldier, they'd done that, and it was time to move on and do something else. So, do you know what? Congratulations, Nick. You've achieved your boyhood dream. You've become an actor. Now, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And that was a beautiful, a beautiful example of reframing and a really good kick up the arse, just to say, stop feeling sorry for yourself and get on with things. And I think sometimes it's great, when we're coaching people and we are with people who we're training or coaching who are a bit stuck. It's great to help them get a little bit unstuck and just pull them out and say, with that thinking, you're not going to move on. So let's start with, where you are right now, and then we can move on from there. So yeah, that's always stuck with me. Best piece of advice ever had.
That is truly profound as a piece of advice, and the need to be adaptable. It's not over until it's over, to keep moving forward. I enjoy a quote, actually, which is quite superficial, I suppose, which is in Finding Nemo, Dory, who's got a very short-term memory, problem, which is just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. It's the idea of just keep participating and moving forward. And
yes,
you've had many conversations since with your father, I'm assuming, where you've been able to tell him what profound and sage-like advice that was.
Well, Do you know, I was just thinking when I was telling that story, and I've told the story recently to somebody else, I thought, you know, next time I'm home, which sadly, I don't know when that will be because of this extraordinary situation that we're in, I will definitely tell them that. I know that I have in the past, but maybe it's been a while since I've told them that. So I'd love to go back home, and that will be the first thing I do. I'll sit them up over a pint and tell them, yeah.
And would you say that's one of the most profound bits of advice you've ever been given to put you on your current path, as a sort of nudge, if you like?
I don't think it necessarily put me on this particular path, but what it did is it started me off again. It got me going again. It got me moving. And like Nima, I found that with momentum, things happened. Things that maybe I didn't expect to happen. I didn't expect to be, for example, doing what I'm doing now and where I'm doing it. But without momentum, I wouldn't be here, because I'd just be sort of sitting in a squat in London still feeling sorry for myself. So it's the moment. I believe that Nemo quote isn't in any way. What did you say it was?
I said it's superficial, but maybe it's not.
I don't think it is. No, I think it's lovely advice. Just keep on going. Keep on going.
Yes.
In the same way that, you know, if you were giving somebody advice about writing something, if they were writing a script or a book, you just say, just start writing. Just start writing. You can edit it down, and you know that about the creative process as well. It's just get some stuff down, and if it's rubbish, well, let's worry about that later. We were talking about that last week, weren't we? When we were talking about the band who have that idea.
Oh yes, Aerosmith. Thank you for that. Do tell me, by the way, because I love it.
Well, the Aerosmith, they were talking to Dan Brown, the writer, and he tells the story, and he said, yeah. I get stuck sometimes in the creative process. And they said, never get stuck in the creative process. And he said, we have sessions once a week, which we call Dare to Suck. And he went, what is Dare to Suck? And he said, what we do is we all get together and we come up with the craziest, worst possible ideas that we've had that week in the shower, or wherever we've had them. The worst possible ideas. And we admit to everyone else, this is a really bad idea. Anyway, here's my idea. And they say nine times out of 10, the idea is an absolute shocker, and they all roll about laughing about how bad the idea is. But they said once every now and again, once out of 10, an absolute gem pops out. And that is the creative process.
Beautiful. And I love the idea that, you know, you're in the shower and you think, do you know what, here's my idea. I'm really embarrassed about this. Sort of metaphorically, I've taken a bit of a dump in the shower, but here it is. But then it turns into a eureka moment, as you said. And I remember we were talking about this when we abandoned because of your air conditioning before. But it was the idea that I'd heard a really brilliant podcast series by Louis Theroux called Grounded during lockdown. And Chris O'Dowd, big, tall, majestic Irish actor, saying, do you know what, during lockdown, there's been an awful lot of creative diarrhea. So I'm squitting out ideas. And of course, you know, even in our journey to now, which we're going to be talking about shortly, there's this idea that, you know, we're all occasionally happy to report some solids. And indeed, coming back to Aerosmith, I remember in the article you sent me, one of those ideas was Love in an Elevator, as one of those seminal songs. So your journey to now, we share Working Voices, that glorious global communication skills entity in common. Just talk about your journey to that, Clearing. What brought you into I mean, we've known each other, I think, I started in 2010. I think you started just before me, didn't you?
Yeah, not long before you, yes, because I was 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And
not 9 or 10 years old, just to be clear. Try to age yourself down there. I'll see what you did.
Yeah, that's how long I've been. That's how long I've been in the business. Yeah. Well, it's funny, you know. I don't think it was anything. It was just. And this is maybe a good example of sometimes kind of staying in contact with people. And yes, and is something that you like to say. And it would have been very easy to have said to Nick when he approached me, actually, I'm not really sure if that's the type of thing I do. So I reconnected with Nick, who I'd been at drama school with.
Where you met. Yes. So Nick Fordham, who's our illustrious leader. Yeah.
As you can see from the poster behind me, I love cricket.
Okay.
It's an unrequited love affair. So I love cricket, but cricket doesn't love me. You know, in fact, it's almost a sort of a toxic abusive relationship because whenever I try and play cricket, I get humiliated in public by cricket.
Are you always for a duck?
Yeah, or exactly, yeah. I flew all the way back from China once to play a game of cricket, and I was out for a duck, and I heard somebody shout, "Well, you've heard of a Peking duck? That's a Shanghai duck," because that's what I live in. I'm absolutely hopeless at cricket. And in fact, I'm going to be 50 this year, and it will be the first time and only time I'll get anywhere near a half century. Anyway, so I met Nick with a sort of actors cricket team, and he started sort of dropping this idea with me, and I wasn't sure about it at first, but luckily, you know, with that kind of momentum thing that we talked about, I was in a frame of mind to say yes and rather than maybe not. I'm not sure, and it's been a wonderful journey. It really has. It's something that I wasn't sure I'd be able to do, but it turns out from some of the feedback I've received, I'm not bad at it, and I've loved doing it, and I've loved it. And to go back to that sort of sitting down and having that beer with my dad, what has been wonderful for me, and I'm sure the same for you as well, is having trained to do something as a young man and having spent those years studying to do that. It's really wonderful that years later, in a slightly different profession, you're using those skills in a professional setting and making the most of that. And so again, it's another way of thinking that wasn't wasted time at all. It was actually invaluable.
All part of the journey, all part of the process. In fact, we do share another thing in common there in your story or your anecdote about your father, because my dad said when I wanted to be an actor, if you want to be an actor, be a teacher first, and that'll always give you something to fall back onto. And he's in his mid-80s now, but I have been able to go back and say, do you know what, that has been brilliant advice, because all the transferable skills of being an actor, teacher, facilitator, coach, and comedy improvisation performer in the background has all, you know, equipped me for this sort of yes and future focus we have in common.
Yeah.
Even the notion of saying yes more is of itself a really interesting mindset, because sometimes, as we both have experienced, you know, I had a similar experience. I wasn't quite sure what I was saying yes, maybe, or yes and to with Nick Smallman. Sometimes windows of opportunity are on a really lubricated hinge.
Yes.
When you enter into a new domain that you just weren't expecting.
And I think that would be advice I would give to anyone. I would just say, you know, say yes. Just say yes to stuff. I think that there was a fun comedian, I can't remember who it was, who he did a whole series recently, well, not recently, about a few years back now, about just saying yes to everything. You know, that was the premise of his TV series. He just said yes to stuff.
I think it might be, if I may, is it a Jim Carrey film, The Yes Man? There is a film about somebody who just
it's not a film. It was a TV series. It was a British comedian, and this was the premise of his TV series. And so there were real things that he was doing that he was saying yes to. People were kind of challenging him to do something, and he was saying yes. And he just said, and I think he wrote a book about it as well, and he said it was a profound, life-changing experience, just saying yes. So yeah, that was something that, so yeah, fell into it by accident in a way, but because, as I said, because of that momentum, not entirely by accident. Yes. And I'm very grateful to Nick for seeing something in me that I didn't see. And I think so many times in the early part of my life, and if I could talk about picking up and shaking, not so much the tree, but my younger self, I would also say to my younger self, and in fact anyone who is young and is unlikely to be listening to two old men talking like we are now, but just in case there is anyone under 30 who is listening to a couple of old farts, I would say, don't wait for external factors or other people to motivate you to do something.
Yes.
Just say yes. Don't wait for other people to tell you that you're good enough to do it. Don't wait for a diploma or something that says you can do it. Yes. Just go for it.
And I read a quote just a couple of days ago, which was, don't ask permission to survive. It's this idea of proactivity.
Yeah, lovely.
The idea of, you know, keep participating, keep riding your bike, just keep swimming.
Yes.
So, even in our conversation, I'm intrigued in our conversation how we're both, just instinctively, not because we've teed each other up to this, we're both saying yes, yes. So this yes and mindset is really very, very profound, actually.
I wanted to say no as a joke, and I couldn't. I went,
It's crap.
yeah, it got stuck on my tongue.
Well, you're giving us lovely alchemy and gold in your general life philosophy, and that's partly the next storytelling archetype, which, bless you for being ahead of the curve there. So the alchemy and gold, I've seen you be a real tour de force on stage. The last thing I saw you do in a majestic arena was when you'd arranged a global offsite in Abu Dhabi before the zombie apocalypse, when that was still possible. And it was just last Christmas, and it was a gathering of the working voices, sort of cruel and massive. We all descended on Abu Dhabi. And you did the keynote address at the beginning, which was incredibly witty, incredibly sharp, beautifully positioned us all in that wonderful dynamic where I remember as an actor, the actors I loved the most were those that spent their time on stage making others look good. You made everybody feel good, but also there was that wonderful, if I may, fear factor where you thought you were so good and everyone in our row was going, we've got to now up our ante. And that's a real compliment to you, because we all then walked off thinking, I hope I'm not going to be the weak link. And I'm not just blowing smoke at you. It was just a really beautiful way to position a sort of arena of excellence. And it was for a big global client. So there was a lot at stake, but I was just really struck with how you just, took it in your very enigmatic, took it in your stride.
Well, that's kind of you to say that, because actually that neatly leads to something that I was going to confess about what you might not know about me. But yeah, thank you. Because it was big. There's about 300 people in the crowd, and it was a big event. I do remember saying they had some music at that event, and I did say to them, "Can you pump up the music when I come on?" Yeah. So I remember sort of coming on a bit like a, swaggering on like a boxer going into the ring. But all of that was something that, backstage, when you were listening to the person before me, I'd read somewhere that Tony Robbins, the self-help guru, has a small trampoline backstage.
Oh, wow.
And he bounces up and down to kind of energize himself before he goes on stage. And I'd only recently read that about him. And in order to get myself pumped, for want of a better word, I was standing outside going, as if I just scored a goal at Wembley for Ipswich Town in the FA Cup. I was going, oh! And I was going, yeah.
And by the way, does scoring a goal at Wembley mean more to you than twonking your winning century in cricket?
Oh, good question. No, if I was allowed one sporting moment, I would score a century at Lord's for England against Australia in the Ashes. Because you get that satisfaction of like really going through the paces and then finally doing it, taking off your helmet and waving to your mates in the pavilion. So no.
But I get it's the idea of just in the back of the net. I completely get that beautiful citizen prowess.
But and there was a guy who was setting up the tee for the break who was looking at me as if I was completely nuts. Just him and me in the corridor, as I was kind of really getting myself pumped to walk into a room of 300 people and try and energize them. And so actually, I know the question you're going to ask me. If you don't mind, I'll skip on to it, because it kind of leads to that, which is one thing you might be surprised to know about me, is that many times in my life, I've been very uncomfortable in the spotlight. And I thought that would be very useful to share, because I do coach a lot of people around presenting, and a lot of the time the challenge they have is, feeling uncomfortable public speaking. And so probably the most extreme example of this was I was in a play years and years ago, just a very small three-hander. It was a Harold Pinter play. And as you know, when you do plays in sort of small venues, they tend to be about pubs or in quirky little places. So there was no access to anywhere apart. You had to stay in the wings throughout the whole production. You couldn't get anywhere without going through the auditorium. And my nerves, I was so nervous and so uncomfortable when I was waiting to go on stage. I had just a complete urge all the time to pee, all the time. So what I had to do is I had a big empty 2-litre plastic bottle. And I'd be quietly filling it throughout the whole production whenever I was in the wings, because I was so nervous Now, luckily, there were no women in this show. It was just 3 men. So yeah, I'd be in the wings filling this bottle full of wee because I was so nervous I couldn't control my bladder. But interestingly enough, the moment I got on stage, I was comfortable.
I relate to that, by the way, the idea that, I got so nervous, a little bit of wee came out, and it's just profound, and indeed we can cure that, can't we, by sometimes instructing people on, adrenaline is my friend. It can get you to a place it can't get your performance to without it, and having a testament of your own. I mean, some of the most brilliant performers on the planet have suffered from chronic stage fright. I mean, someone like Daniel Day-Lewis is up there in the sort of lauded, gods of the profession, but has gone
the late break in Home as well.
Late who, sorry?
In Home.
Yes, absolutely.
So absolutely. So I think that's the point about this story and why I shared it was, you're right. You can learn to use those, and again, it's about interpretation and reframing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because like those of us who got married, for example, were probably extremely nervous the day we got married. It didn't necessarily mean we should run away.
Yes.
Get out of there. It just meant that this was something that was important to us, and so use that. Use that.
And that lovely.
And I have. Go on.
It's the idea that it's humanity that binds us all, and we've all been so nervous. If you can access and remember that memory, when we needed to pee, literally. Going back to school, the first day at a new school, a school bully turned up next to a holly bush and said to me, "You're either going to make me laugh or you're going in that holly bush." And I think I just stood there and wet myself, and he laughed, and I didn't go in the holly bush. And so it's this idea of using that.
Yeah. And thanks to him, you became a stand-up comedian because you realised the power of laughter. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that idea of meeting your school bully and saying thanks very much before you punch them in the face because you're as big as they are now. Anyway, back to you, dear. Sorry.
Well, no, that was it. I mean, there have been other occasions. When I first started doing this job, for example, I would often travel for this job, and I'd be in hotels, and I would have sleepless nights. I'd be up till 2, 3 in the morning, worrying about how it would go the next day, and whether I would just completely die, and people would go, "Who is this guy? Why is he teaching this stuff?"
And there's that lovely tension as well, even when you're metaphorically doing the sort of Tony Robbins bounce up and down to get in, to get pumped, as you said. Part of you must have been thinking, because that's relatable psychology. I hope I don't fuck this up. Is a brilliant note someone once said is whispering in my ear before I went on stage as a joke, and I got on really well with them, is don't fuck this up. And we've always got that going on in our mind somewhere.
well, yeah, absolutely. Although I would try and turn it into a positive.
Of course. No, it's lovely psychology. And as you've said, reframing is what's really key here.
Yes. And I think for me, the other thing, which was going through my head just before we went in, actually, one thing I would say is in the moment, I would try and do something more physical than mental.
Yeah.
Because I think that connects with you quickly. If you're bouncing up and down and smiling and laughing, I think that really kind of can click you into the place where you want to be. Because, the other way of thinking about it is, you can't outthink the problem in that moment because the problem is your thinking.
Yes.
You're thinking, I'm nervous, I'm stressed, I'm worried, this is all going to go badly. So it's very difficult to outrun that thinking by saying, "Oh, don't be nervous, don't worry about it, it'll be fine." That doesn't work. In that moment, you've got to do something, as a great acting coach once said, get out of your head and into your body.
Which links to that lovely quote, which I know we both share, which is communication skills is an athletic activity. It requires a sort of move towards and a physicality. Yes.
And I think the other, if anyone's listening and thinks, have you got any more tips about, and I've got bundles, so reach out to LinkedIn. But I would say...
You're a gold mine.
Yeah, I've got a gold mine of tips, so just so that you won't be spending the 10 minutes before you do your annual presentation in the corridor peeing into a kettle. Here are some tips. So the other one I would say, which was a good friend of mine is a singer, and when she started getting a little bit antsy on stage, her coach said to her, it's all about focus. If you're focusing on your audience, if you're focusing on them, making sure that they're having a good time and they're enjoying themselves, then that's where your focus is. The moment your focus is back on yourself, that's when you're going to be nervous, because that's, you're so self-aware. You're going to be thinking, oh, my voice is a bit wobbly, or what did I do with my hands? That's a bit weird. No.
Yeah, it's that inversion of focus about talking to them rather than at them, and making it about them, not about yourself, which is the real key here.
Yes. Yeah.
I hate that expression, the real key here, so I'm slightly embarrassed I said it. And my acting teacher at the old Vic, now sadly departed, Rudy Shelley, would say, acting teacher, well, I will. He wasn't literally like Yoda, but he would say, acting is reacting. And he kept saying that, and many years later you think it absolutely is. Acting, presenting, when your presence is required, it's all about being truly present, and actually it's about listening.
And I'm glad you mentioned present, because actually the one other thing that I wanted to chat about today was, this is something I'm really getting into, is this idea of being present. I really like it, and I think it's really interesting. And I was reading this book by Tim Parks called Calm, and he talks about going on a 10-day silent retreat and like all the stuff that's going on in his head. And the guru who said, everyone's going to come, there's about 50 people in the room, everyone's going to come up and speak. Everyone's going to come up. And he kind of works out in his head, he's going to probably speak on about day 3, because they only have about an hour of speaking each day. So he says, it's wonderfully funny, this passage. It goes in the book for about 5-6 pages of all the ideas in his head that he's thinking, what will I say when I speak? What will I say when I speak? What will I say when I speak? And it just kind of completely dominates his mind for 3 days, getting just totally absorbed about what he's going to say when he speaks. And finally, he gets up, and the guy points at him and he goes, I spent 3 days worrying about what I'm going to say, and now I'm just so exhausted I don't know what to say. And the guru just looks at him and said, interesting. You destroyed the present for a past, for a future that never happened. And I think that's lovely. That's what we so often do when we panic and we're nervous about, when we do stuff, or we're antsy.
That again, that lovely quote, because it's worth repositioning, because I think you faded out just as you delivered a punchline there.
Oh, I always do that. That's why I had to give up.
Say it again. Beautiful.
I'll say it again, because I think he says, you destroyed the present for a future that never happened.
I love that. And the book again is Calm by who, did you say?
Calm by Tim Parks.
Lovely.
As in Battersea.
We could talk for hours about the power of silence as well. I mean, there was a funny story recently about somebody who went to a storytelling convention, and the guy who was running it was a big sort of wizened wizard with a big beard. And the person I knew came away going, God, the person was so wise. And I said, so what did they actually do? And apparently they just spent the entire time just saying absolutely nothing. And I
might try that, my next leadership course, see how it goes down. Yeah.
And during lockdown, you're looking very manicured, may I say. You're not there in sort of lockdown beard. You've got to grow a beard before you can do the wizened storyteller.
No, I'm bucking the trend. I'm shaving, rather than having a lockdown beard. Yeah,
Nick Fordham, I'm bucking the trend. I'm shaving. I love that. So of your apple, you've given us beautiful philosophy, values, delicious stuff. Is there anything else you particularly want to talk about before I award you with a cake in this clearing? No,
I think we, I sort of in my head, I thought about 2 or 3 topics or themes that we might cover, and we've done it.
Boom, we have. So the metaphorical cake is to award you with that for being willing to come here. And then the invitation for you now is to put a cherry on the cake. In Nick Fordham, in the most sought after sort of global head of yourself and awesome pants in Asia, soft skills trainer, beautiful human being, actor, cricketer. What would you like to leave us with as your cherry on the cake?
I think I'm going to leave you with this, which is something that I often say on communication courses and presentation skills courses. And I know some of my colleagues here in Asia have nicked off me now because they like it as well, which is that communication is a transference of energy. And just getting people to recognize that, particularly in the corporate world, because often they see it as some sort of transaction of factual knowledge, and just trying to get them to really understand it's about energy. And then when you're leading that meeting, when you're leading that presentation, when you're standing in that room in front of all those other people, your energy is the energy in the room. Just taking a deliberate choice about what energy you want to put into that room. Because if you don't make that choice, often you're going to do one of two things. You know, you're going to give the wrong type of energy, or you're just going to, even worse, just going to suck the energy out of the room. So really choosing what is the energy I want to bring today to these people that I'm going to communicate with. That's it.
It's been a complete joy and pleasure talking to you. In fact, your sage-like coaching advice has helped me specifically today, because I'm due to go and do one of these big WebEx things where there are 200 people incoming on a call to talk for just an hour about resilience. And just the idea of, you know, presence is going to really help, and the idea of the transference of energy. So I thank you for that tip. That's going to help me today, which is what an awesome coach you are. You're a lovely man.
Yes.
It's been a real pleasure. And
it's been fun.
You've been listening to What You Need Is a Damn Good Listening To with Nick Fordham.